Welcome everyone to Crystal Stairs Census 2020 program, Census 101 webinar. I am your host, the Census Guy, K.O. Johnson. Let's get started. Welcome to the Census. Today, we'll be covering these key points. What is the census? Why do we have the census? Why does the census matter? Who gets counted? When is the census? Is the census safe? How do you fill out the census? We will also discuss the importance of having your children and your babies on your 2020 census form and important key census dates. Shall we begin? What is the census? I like to always start out with this short YouTube clip that kind of gives you an insight on what the census is about. And then from there, we can kind of break down everything that you will see in this short video.
What is the 2020 census? Every 10 years, the census records everyone living in this country. It's written in the Constitution and comes in a questionnaire that counts everyone who lives at your address on April 1st. The data can be used to inform funding for services like fire stations, schools, clinics, and representation that affect your community.
How will 2020 census data be used? Where there are more people, there are more needs for public services. That's why the census is used by the government to inform funding decisions each year. But that's not all. It's also used by nonprofits to inform services, by businesses to create jobs, and even by students for school projects. Understanding how the population changes helps us shape communities across the country for the better.
How does the 2020 census affect representation? There are 435 seats in the House of Representatives. These get distributed to the 50 states by population, and an accurate census response helps your state get the right amount of seats. States with smaller populations get at least one, while states with larger populations might get more.
How do I take the 2020 census? In March 2020, every address in the country will receive an invitation to complete a simple questionnaire, and there are 3 ways to respond. Number 1, do it online. Number 2, call by phone. Number 3, send it by mail. For those who don't respond, a census taker from your community will follow up and assist you.
Is my 2020 census data safe? After sending your census response, your personal information is kept safe. By law, it can't be shared with any other government agency, law enforcement, or landlord. No one. So take your 2020 census with peace of mind. Shape your future. Start here. Visit.
Now, as we move forward, keep that in mind as we break down each of the key points in the census. What is the census? The United States Census is a national population count that takes place once every 10 years. Why do we have the census? The census helps determine congressional representation and inform how billions of dollars in federal funding is distributed to each state for the next 10 years. So here in the state of California, we have 53 representatives in Congress. And because of those 53 representatives, it reflects on the billions of dollars in federal funding that the state of California has received since 2010. Why the census matters? The census matters because the data collected will be used to make important decisions that will affect you, your family, and your community for the next 10 years. As I stated before, the state of California has received billions of dollars in federal funding since 2010. That amount was $115 billion, and it simply was based off the census data that was collected. This is why it is very important that we count everyone so that we do not lose these resources. Who gets counted? It's very simple. Everyone. The count is mandated by the U.S. Constitution. The census counts all people who reside in the United States once, regardless of citizenship or immigration status. Again, the census counts all people who reside in the United States once, regardless of citizenship or immigration status. The 2020 census marks the 24th time that the country has counted its population since 1790. Yes, this is the 24th time that the census has taken place. So it is not new to our U.S. process. It is something that we have done since 1790. It's important to know that your children count in the 2020 census. I'd like to show a short video clip from First 5 LA that kind of gives you a bright outlook and understanding of why our children and our babies are important on the 2020 census. As you can see, our children and babies are very important, especially in our census form. How to count our children. It is critical that families and caretakers for children are aware of how children are counted, including those living in non-traditional households. Children should be counted at the household they are living in on April the 1st, even if their biological parents are not living in that household. This includes children living with or in grandparents' homes, step-parents' homes, or other extended family members. This also includes foster children or adopted families or foster families. This also includes unrelated adults, even shared custody arrangement. The child is counted in the household of the custodial parent the child is living with on April the 1st. Again, even if there's a shared custody agreement that's in place, the child should be counted in the household of the custodial parent the child is living with on April the 1st. It is very important that our children are counted in our 2020 census. How to count our babies. Family members and caregivers should try to coordinate to make sure that each child is counted in only one household. Babies born on or before April the 1st should be counted at the home where they will live or sleep most of the time, even if they are still in the hospital. Again, babies born on or before April the 1st should be counted at the home where they will be living or sleeping most of the time, even if they are still in the hospital. Babies born after April the 1st should not be counted in the 2020 census. Please, any babies who are born after April the 1st should not be counted in the 2020 census. But babies born before or on April the 1st should be counted in your 2020 census. The benefits of counting your children. By counting your children in the census, you can help make sure they will receive important services, such as Head Start, free and low-cost school lunches, more affordable housing for them to live, after-school activities, Medi-Cal, Medicare, WIC, CHIP, which stands for Children Health Insurance, early intervention services for children with special needs. These programs are important to the success of our children and our babies. It is important that we ensure they are included on our 2020 census, because by counting them, we can ensure that these programs are available for them for the next 10 years. Now think about this. Have you ever thrown a birthday party for your child or for your babies? The first thing we generally do is that we send out invitations to the families of the children that we would like to invite to this birthday party. The purpose of doing this is to help ensure that we get the correct count once, so that we can have enough activities, tables, enough food, and enough fun available for all children and parents who will be attending this party. The census is no different. Let's make sure that our children are counted on our 2020 census so that there is enough for them for the next 10 years. Our community counts. Information collected by the census helps decide how much money our community will get for things like schools, public transportation, hospitals, social services. Again, the information collected by the census helps decide how much money our community will get for things like schools, public transportation, hospitals, and social services. Participating in the census means you are claiming your community's fair share of federal money. Yes, it is up to us to claim our community's fair share of federal money. The census also decides how much political representation our community will have. Being counted makes sure that you have a voice in our government. Being counted makes sure that you have a voice in our government. It is your chance to safely resist exclusion. This is why it's important that our community is counted. It's so we are included in decisions and that our voice is being heard within our government. These things are important because it reflects on what would take place for the next 10 years. Let's make sure our community is counted. Our Latino community counts. When the Latino community is undercounted, political boundaries may not accurately reflect the reality. This is why it's important that our Latino community is counted. The reason why Latino community is missed so often in the census is generally because of things such as this: language barriers, poverty, education, and immigration status. Well, these are things that we can eliminate by completing the 2020 census. With language barriers, it helps us have the opportunity to be able to employ more interpreters and having interpreters available as needed. With poverty, is that the census helps establish employment and employment opportunities throughout the states. In education, it helps ensures that there's educational programs available for our community. In immigration status, there is no immigration questions on the census. The census helps eliminate the things that are considered barriers for us so that they're not barriers anymore. And we can help ensure that for the next 10 years. Our Latino children count. Latino children make up more than 24% of U.S. children under the age of 5. 55% live in a household with complex living arrangements, sometimes moving between various relatives or caregivers. A fourth of the young Latino children also live in linguistically isolated households where adults have difficulty speaking English. Each of these characteristics is correlated with heightened risk of being hard to count. In 2010, Latino children made up more than 36% of the total net undercount for all children under the age of 5, more than double the undercount of non-Hispanic white children. You might say, census guy, why is this important? Because in 2010, more than 2 million children were left off of the census. This is why this is important. We have to make sure that our children are counted. We have to make sure that they are included on our census form. They simply want us to stand up and say that they matter too. Let's try to make sure that we are including our children on the 2020 census. It's important because it ensures their future. Our African American community counts. When African American communities are undercounted, political boundaries may not accurately represent the reality. This is true. The 2010 census undercounted the African American community population by more than 800,000. Approximately 7% of young African American children were overlooked by the 2010 census, roughly twice the rate of young non-Hispanic white children. And African American men have been historically undercounted in greater numbers than men of other racial or ethnic groups. Some of the reason why African Americans are missed on the census is because of poverty and housing insecurity. Well, these are things that the census can help us eliminate by being able to ensure there's more employment and job opportunities and educational opportunities, as well as ensuring that programs such as low-income housing and Section 8 housing are available for our communities. This is why it's important to ensure that our community is counted. It's because it can help change things that are considered barriers and create greater opportunities for the future. The benefits of ensuring our Latino and African American communities are counted is that the funding that each state receives can help to ensure the next 10 years for the programs that our families, our community, and our children take part in, such as Title I, special grants for education, Head Start program, Child Care and Development Fund, and Federal Foster Care Program. It takes a lot of money to help ensure these programs in each state, especially here in the state of California. Again, the state of California received $115 billion back in 2010 over the last 10 years. A lot of that funding went towards programs that support our families and that support our children. That's why it's so important that we continue to ensure that these programs are available for the future. The census is America's selfie, and it gives us a picture of who lives in our country. Have you ever taken a selfie before? The goal of the selfie is to make sure that everyone is included and to make sure that everyone is counted. Well, the 2020 census is no different. Let's take our selfie so that everybody is counted and included for the next 10 years. When is the census? Well, starting this month, the U.S. Census Bureau mailed letters to every household in the United States, inviting all to respond to the census survey. Every household should have received a letter requesting that they complete a census survey online, by mail, or by phone between March the 12th and March the 20th. Filling out the census is easy. You can complete the census online, by mail, or by phone. When filling out the census online, you are able to use the following devices: your mobile phone or cell phone, computer or laptop, even a tablet. You'll be asked simple questions like your age, if you are married, and the number of children in your home. It is important that everyone living with you is counted. That's children, that's relatives, friends, and roommates. It takes only about 10 minutes to fill out. Again, you can complete the census online, by mail, or by phone. Here's a quick census questionnaire review. What the 2020 census questionnaire will ask you: the number of people living or staying in the house, apartment, or mobile home on April the 1st, whether the residence is a house, apartment, or a mobile home, a telephone number, the sex and age and date of birth, Hispanic origins, race, relationships of persons in the household, including opposite and same-sex spouses and unmarried partners. What the 2020 census questionnaire would not ask: citizenship status would not be asked. Immigration status would not be asked. Social security number would not be asked. Permit or license of any converted units on property would not be asked. The use of public benefits would not be asked. Criminal background or convictions would not be asked. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, even those who have been to prison, who have served some time, are still counted in the census. So let's make sure that they are also included on the census. There will be no bank account or payment information questions asked, or employment and income or wealth information asked. The questionnaire is very simple. Is the census safe? Your information is protected by federal law. That means it will be kept completely confidential. We know your privacy is important. That's why it is illegal for anyone to share your information, including the Census Bureau. The Census Bureau can only use your response to create information about the general population and statistics. Your responses to the 2020 census are protected by law. under Title 13 of the U.S. Code. Again, your responses are protected by law under Title 13 of the U.S. Code. Besides Title 13, there's another law that protects your census questionnaire. It's considered to be called the 72-year rule. The U.S. government will not release personally identifiable information about an individual to any other individual or agency under the 72 years after it was collected for the census. The 72-year rule is under the public law, restricts access to your census records to all but the individual name on the record or their legal heir. Again, your information is protected by Title 13 and under the public law 72-year rule. The census is safe. Here's a quick census fun fact. Since its inception, data collected by the census has been used by companies like Ancestry.com and 23andMe to help determine genealogy and ancestry. That's right. The census data has been used to help to determine genealogy and ancestry. You might say, well, census guy, how is that possible? You just told us about Title 13 and the 72-year rule. Well, the census data that has been released has only been the data from 1930 and 1940 and prior to those years. Your information in 2020 will not be released for 72 years. So the census does two things. It helps to secure our past, and it helps to ensure our future. Now here is a sample invitation envelope that you might have received in the mail between March the 12th and March the 20th. This so you can clearly see what the envelope looks like. See, in the envelope's window, it just says to resident at and whatever the address is. There's no particular name on it. It's just to that particular address. Now, inside the envelope, you will see an invitation letter. This is an example of what the invitation letter looks like. Now, I wanted to point to certain information in that letter. Now, for those who would prefer to complete their census questionnaire over the phone, there's a number in your letter that you can call and you can do so. It's 1-844-330-2020. Again, it's 1-844-330-2020. Now, there is language assistance online for those who will be completing their census online. There's 12 non-English languages, and so it helps us with that self-response, and for those who speak other languages. There's also language assistance through phone support, and there's 12 non-English languages available. And so again, it helps with that response and for you to be able to have multiple access to be able to complete your census form, even if you speak other languages. So we ask that you pledge to be counted by joining us on social media at Crystal Stairs and at We Count LA on Twitter and Facebook. Thank you for participating in today's census webinar. And from us here at Crystal Stairs and me, the census guy, wishing you a great day and complete your 2020 census. Be counted, because this is our community, so it makes it our count.